welcome back to my channel. So I just want to sort of talk to you today about some issues that have been a lot on my mind lately in relation to disability advocacy and getting your needs met as a disabled person whose disability is largely invisible. So as you know probably, because I have talked about this in other videos, I have been in conversations with social services lately, trying to shore up my future needs when my dad is no longer around to look after me, essentially. Because currently my dad manages all of my finances. He does cleaning, does all of those sort of things, filling out forms, etc. He does them for me because I basically lack capacity to do it myself. But because I am highly verbal and articulate, people do not realise, people outside of my close family, that is, people often do not realise how severely disabled I am. And when I try to tell people, they often I can tell they don't really seem to understand. And this is incredibly alienating and frustrating because I know myself what I am and not capable of. And I know how my disability affects me. And it's very, very frustrating when other people do not listen. It feels incredibly belittling. And it makes me very, very angry because it feels like an existential attack on my future. The fact that people are not listening and are not understanding. And this is the experience I've been having lately with a social worker who I have to say is as dense as mud. He just does not seem to get it. And he has clearly not read my notes. I talked to you about this in another video because I was talking about how I was trying to get them to understand, I was asking them whether or not I could use my direct payments in future on a professional cleaner, and I've done a whole video on that, so go and check that out if you want the background to that. Earlier on this week, I was lucky enough to have a meeting, what felt like quite a productive meeting, with someone quite high up in a county council who I think works in commissioning, because I attend the Autism Partnership Board, all on Zoom at the moment. I attend the Autism Partnership Board and have done for a very long time, and the person who chairs that, who's in the commissioning team for learning disabilities and autism at the county council, she put me in contact with one of her colleagues because I mentioned to her my problems with direct payments and the inflexibility I was in the system that I was experiencing, and my poor and the problems I was having kind of advocating for my needs with this social worker who wasn't actually listening and things. So I sort of mentioned it to her, and she put me in contact with one of her colleagues, and I had a meeting with her yesterday, a Zoom meeting, or it's on Microsoft Teams, but I had a meeting with her yesterday, which went on for about an hour, and she was really nice, and actually listened. A completely different experience to the one I had with a social worker. I really felt she was listening, and she was very approachable, and just made me feel like supported, and consequently it meant I could articulate myself in a relatively stress-free environment. I just wish that my experience with a social worker was the same. It just goes to show how you feel in any interaction with someone really does depend on that person's ability to listen. And I think particularly as an autistic person, because obviously I struggle with, social stuff, in a way it matters even more because I already find, although I appear highly verbal and articulate and everyone says how articulate I am and everything, don't forget it's a hell of a lot of effort for me, what's going on in here. Whenever I'm in a situation with someone, no matter how articulate I might appear, it's at a great cost for me. If the other person is listening and understanding, that obviously reduces that anxiety somewhat. But when I'm with someone like a social worker who just clearly is not listening and doesn't understand, it raises my anxiety to such an extent I end up almost in meltdown. And that's what happened last time when I was speaking to him. I actually got so angry I tried to articulate myself the best I could, but I ended up having to leave because it was so clear he wasn't listening. It meant I was basically in meltdown mode, and I literally would have ended up swearing if I'd stayed any longer, so I made the decision to leave because it was at that point of no return. But with the person I spoke to the other day, it was a completely different experience, and I was able to talk and articulate myself with what I felt quite coherently because I knew she was listening. She was really nice. Obviously, she's not a social worker, and she works high up. I think, yeah, she's in commissioning in a county council. She's not in the direct payments team, but she basically took notes on what I said, and she's going to kind of find out for me, like, the exact ins and outs of it and why they've made the decision I can't use direct payments on a cleaner. I also sent her a case study of, it was a case study from Wales, which I don't know if it has a different system to England, but anyway, I sent her a case study from Wales, someone who has been allowed to use their direct payments on a cleaner, and basically in a very similar situation to me, with a different condition, but for the same reasons, who needs a cleaner for the same reasons, and whose county council allocated them a cleaner, because I was like, well, if they allow it there, why aren't they allowing it here? Because there doesn't seem to be any consistency. So she asked if I could send her that case study, which I have done. And yeah, she might arrange another meeting with me as well, but she's going to be doing some sort of like finding out exactly what's going on, and get back to me. So I don't know if that's going to resolve anything or not, but at any event, I felt listened to, and it was quite good to get it off my chest, and she was very understanding and supportive. The social worker, completely different picture. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to have to move on to video number 2 to carry on talking about this, but what I was trying to talk about is just how frustrating and absolutely demoralising it is as a disabled person constantly having to reiterate your disability to people who literally do not understand how disabled you are, and who basically make assumptions and end up patronising you, and it's so belittling, and it's scary, and it makes you feel angry, and it's an existential threat on your very well-being, and you shouldn't have to be in that position, that degrading position of not being listened to. And I don't know why some of these people become social workers, because they literally have no emotional intelligence at all. Like, and if you ask me, people who become social workers should have emotional intelligence to be able to do that sort of job, because it's no good them going and getting degrees and reading lots of books on social policy if they don't know how to interact with the people they're trying to support. If they don't have that ability, they should not be working in a care industry. These people should not, because they're working with people who are already in stressful situations, and they need to have that ability to listen. That's the most important thing. Because you know when you're being listened to. Like I said, the person I spoke to from the county council was listening to me straight away. I immediately knew she was going to be listening to me. The social worker, from the get-go, he comes across as aloof, standoffish. He doesn't listen. He's patronising. It gets my back up. It's quite hard to put a finger on exactly what it is, but you know it when you see it. You know it when someone's not listening to you. It sends out bad vibes, and I'm very sensitive to that. So yeah, so moving over to video number 2, because I just want to carry on talking about how disability is often denied. So moving over to video number 2 now.